And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog, what's real, what ain't, is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the fact.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. I'm still trying to get used to our new theme song. It's kind of a slow jam. Ease your way into the work week this morning. So good morning. I am Kerri. And I have with me today, bright and early, my lovely and talented co-host, Andy Kennedy. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning.
That's a lie. Andy is never not happy except when I do something. So, just rare moments.
That's not necessarily true. You don't have to do anything.
I just be. So.
Yes. What did you call yourself?
Mm.
Celtic Barbie?
Yes, Celtic Barbie. So yeah, I was on a boat, and you don't put an Irish chick on a boat. I am so sunburned. I had to adjust all of my lighting. And first question Andy asked was, well, didn't you use sunscreen? Yes, I did. And wore a t-shirt, and doesn't matter. I was in the shade, doesn't matter. No,
Well,
sunburn.
if you're Celtic Barbie, I'm Hobbit Ken.
There you go. And so for those who cannot tell because of the magic of video, Andy's tiny.
I'm little TV.
He's petite.
Without the hairy feet.
Well, that we know of. So, yeah, so a lot happened when we signed off on Friday. And a lot of it was stuff that I was just letting it roll through the cycle, because there's always the initial outrage of what happened, and then it kind of simmers, and then we get to the truth of what happened. So that transpired over the weekend, and what I'm talking about is Trump's announcement about a stoppage on the FICA tax. So when I first saw it, I think I laughed so hard because his entire plan relied on people not understanding how things work. We know how things work. So of course it was hilariously funny to me, and then you just let it kind of simmer, and that's exactly what happened. So there was some walking back of that, and then some damage control on the Sunday talk shows, the Sunday morning talk shows, and then here we are to Monday. But first, what I want to cover right now is, Andy, you kind of predicted this, and we're seeing it happen. So early on, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the protests and the value of looting. So overnight here in Chicago, we had a coordinated large-scale looting effort of the Magnificent Mile. So for people who are not familiar with how Chicago works, all of the protests were centered on the south side of the city. And one of the things that the police had done, and our mayor, was put up the drawbridges. So there's a river that runs through Chicago. That's the one that gets dyed green on St. Patrick's Day. But on the north side of that is Magnificent Mile. This is the high rent district. This is where you have all of the Gucci, Ferragamo, all of these really expensive stores with their outlets on the north side. So for 10 weeks, the protests have been on the south side. Well, overnight, protesters, about 4 a.m., 4:30, protesters began looting these really expensive high-end stores, which is an absolute no-no. You can loot a dollar store all you want, and you'll be fine. You loot Gucci, they bring out live ammo, and that's kind of what's been happening in Chicago this morning. So real quick, I just want to, I read this quote from one of the people observing this. She's a Chicago local. And Andy, it reminded me of something you said. She said she's watching people break into the Ferragamo, the Nike, the Timberland stores. And she says, how much more of this did they think we were going to take? This woman said as she leaned up on a solar powered trash can while looters threw patio chairs through the window of Salvatore Ferragamo's flagship store. And she said, this has been coming. And that was, it struck me, Andy, that was something you had said a couple weeks ago when we talked about the market realities of what looting actually does, right? So
Sure.
refresh people on that.
Well, it's, I mean, I always want to disclaimer the statement by saying that I'm not telling people what to do, but when you have a portion of society that doesn't ever get an opportunity to go out and, you know, purchase things other than stuff that keeps them alive, right? You have, the only way they can acquire stuff is through means that allows you to get it without paying for it. You know, and when we talk about looting, we talk about, well, who is it that the victims are, right? Is it the store owners that are the victims? Well, no, because, you know, we basically have to, you know, the insurance company to pay for the broken window or the broken door. And then, of course, as a business, you're required to have content insurance on your business. And so anything that was stolen or broken is replaced through your business insurance. And, you know, so you said, well, it's the insurance companies that were victimized here. And well, no, because they were part of the big corporations that got huge bailout money when it was supposed to go to people and small businesses. So, like, I mean, so what ends up happening is people that would, in their entire lifetime, have absolutely no way to acquire anything that any of those stores sell, you know, will get these products and, you know, sell them back at a cheaper price, which, you know, gives, you know, rich people who have the money the opportunity to buy it on sale. And so there's a whole exchange of you know, people in our society that actually get this stuff and use this stuff. And when we talked about the riots in New York as an example, there was one DJ for every square mile of New York City. And then after the riots and the looting occurred, it went to 16 DJs for every mile in New York City, which is, so it created business opportunities for people who don't have those opportunities, right? So there's a lot of different ideas and suggestions that we can think about when we think of what happens when looting occurs.
Right, and I think what made your statement more telling was one woman, for whatever reason, she decided to live stream. I forget which store they were looting, but she was live streaming and she kind of jokingly said, I got goods for sale, y'all. And it just, yeah. So now not only does she have an opportunity here illegally, but it just goes to the point that what did you think was going to happen here? When we have such an economic disparity, and now when things are getting really dire, we have people who are about to be evicted, people who can't pay their mortgage, and then they've lost the extra benefit for unemployment. You still have almost 50 million people unemployed, and we're celebrating 1 million minimum wage jobs created. no, none of this works. And at the same time, Congress went home and didn't finish what they were set out to do, which was help the people. Right now, they're only helping Wall Street and themselves through their stocks and propping up Wall Street. It's
Sure. So you could think of the looting as a less direct stimulus check, right? Like, I mean, if they are going to wait till the last second and then, not come up with anything, and then most of Congress and the Senate goes to summer camp and they're gone, right? So now you've left all these people in the lurch. Well, if you're going to go and loot through the companies and the corporations that are involved in that, the governments are the ones that are propping up the corporations. So it's just a less direct stimulus check.
Yeah, for those people who showed up at 4:30 in the morning. So that was, early bird, bootstraps. Yeah, so that's happening right now as we speak. And what I thought was interesting is all the courts, most all of the clerks of courts and things like that, they've been told not to report to work, that they're going to work virtually. So Chicago is a little bit having a rough Monday morning. So I wonder if other cities are going to start.
You can almost hear the pearl clutching this morning.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, that's Chicago. Where Chicago goes, everyone else will follow. And the reason for that is we're a Midwestern city. We have not one, but two of the largest inland ports in the entire country. I think it's upwards of 75% of all goods that are shipped interstate come through Illinois and Chicago. So if we're having issues here, you're going to start to see that in other places too. And no amount of federal troops, National Guard, whatever, is really going to quell this until we get some rational policy to follow through. So that's what I wanted to talk about this morning. And I know that some of this is going to be a little heavy. So we'll keep it light. We'll keep it light because most of it is just absolutely ridiculous. So to me, it's funny in a sad kind of way, but I want to get started with let's start with Sturgis. Andy, you'll love this. Sturgis. Do you know?
Sure. Let's go right to the meat and potatoes.
Or Harleys and whatever else you got. So Sturgis, do you know what Sturgis is? What happens?
Yes, it's a big fish.
No, that's a sturgeon. That's a sturgeon. So Sturgis?
It's a big fish on a motorcycle.
Yes, that's very close. So Sturgis is this celebration of biker culture and hedonism. Let's be honest about it. It's full on hedonism. Clothing is sometimes optional and just all sorts of things happen there. This is the wilding out that bikers and particularly conservatives don't want to talk about. But they go wild at Sturgis and celebrate freedoms. So in the age of COVID, there was some concern about it. So the people of Sturgis who rely on this income took a vote, and more than 60% said no, let's not host this celebration this year. However, the governor was encouraging it, and this is the same governor who invited Trump, and they had that big rally over at Mount Rushmore. And she said, now here's where the logic got funny. She said, well, Trump held his rally and all these people came in from around the country and we really didn't have a spike afterwards, so it should be okay.
So they can't make the leap from everybody coming from different places and then leaving.
You caught that right away, Andy. Yay, Andy, you got it. And that's exactly what happened. So here's Sturgis. Sturgis is, I believe it's a week, maybe up to 10 days. So Sturgis, and even some of the people who are organizing and whatever, they're like, they described this one as, it's a major experiment. It could be a major mistake. So here's what's going on. So you have upwards of 250,000 to 1 million bikers and biker enthusiasts converging on this small town, and there are concerts and all sorts. It's the biker Woodstock. So what they've decided to do was outdoor festivals and social distancing where you can just drive your bike into a concert venue and maintain at least 3 feet apart. Most people aren't wearing masks. A couple people are. A lot of people are going to bars and things like this. So for the 60% of Sturgis people who recognize that they would be losing a lot of money, now you have servers and bartenders and all of these other people who are going to be exposed by non-mask wearers coming into their cities. So to me, it was, Andy, the same thing as the looters, right? But in reverse. Here you have people who are going to be at risk and exposed, but it's okay because the potential of money coming in outweighs the risk to the individual person. And I thought that was
sure. Yeah. Well, makes perfect sense.
Right. So I would remind everybody to the episode in South Korea, where they were almost finished with COVID and then started to loosen restrictions. And they had one gentleman on a night of partying transmit COVID to 200 people, one guy. So now we have all of these non-mask wearers, my freedom, people going into a small town. We'll mix together with 500,000 people and then go home. So we're looking at a wave 2 here in the United States in 2 weeks.
Yeah, didn't we all get off the ground in March because a whole bunch of kids went to Miami Beach?
Oh, we sure did, but that was their freedoms, Andy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, their freedoms.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so we have become in the United States a case of what not to do, because not only are we still dealing with this pandemic and this idea of personal freedoms versus risk, but at the same time, again, we have millions of people out of work. That means no access to insurance, or if they do qualify for Medicaid, good luck finding a provider. And then the cost of treatment for little things is pretty expensive. And we've seen people post their bills for their COVID test. It's $1,500 to $2,300 for a test that was supposed to be free, and in many cases has not been. $38,000 for treatment for COVID if you don't necessarily need ICU, but you're hospitalized. $73,000 if you are hospitalized and don't have insurance. And all of these things are just compounded now that the rent moratorium and the mortgage moratorium have ended, and unemployment, the extra benefit, is now gone. So we have the recipe for some serious issues here. And part of this is just the lack of understanding of basic economics on a federal level for the public, and then even in Congress, where you have to wonder, do they not understand how federal appropriations work, or are they just downright evil? So one example I would take is in Congress right now, when you have the strongest voices who keep saying it's socialism or a handout, and they know better. So this is Mitch McConnell and his ilk who are saying that, no, we're going to cut this. That is downright evil. But then you have other people like my congressman who still swears up and down that he has no idea how federal appropriations work. I have to look at him like, are you stupid, or do you think I'm stupid?
No, it's more on the evil scale.
Okay,
right?
all right. So we'll go with that. So to highlight this, now I was catching up on some of my fellow independent progressive media, and I came across Kyle Kulinski, dang it, I know his name at his show, secular, whatever. It's
Talk.
yeah, secular talk. Yes, Kyle, you're awesome. We love you. So he had a show 6 days ago. I'm gonna post the link to it so that you can watch the whole thing. But he was doing a critique of Michelle Obama has a new podcast. If you have not been on social media and seen ads plastered absolutely everywhere, well, she's got a new podcast. So
Yes, and she had a guest that you may have heard of.
right. So her guest was her husband, former President Barack Obama, which obviously, if you're going to run a podcast and you have a spouse that was president, wouldn't you have them on? So
Well, she's there in the kitchen.
just doing nothing, just eating Cheerios and causing
Honey,
problems.
can you come in here for a second?
Right. So I'm gonna post the link to Kyle's. Boy, he had a takedown on some of the comments that Michelle and Barack made. And at first I was listening to Kyle and I thought it was hilarious because he was doing a really good takedown and he was doing it so politely. But I think that he missed some opportunities here that I want to make sure that we cover. But real quick, here's Kyle talking about it with a short snippet. So let me go ahead and get that rolling.
The stuff they say is just as smug, arrogant, elitist, and disconnected as you thought it would be. Watch this.
The only thing that worries me, and I agree in terms of the hope that I feel when I look at young people, just how they were raised, the values, their exposure, the questions that they have, the change in the economy that's forcing them to ask a certain set of questions. That gives me hope. But the thing that I worry is that I hear, I think, too many young people who question whether voting, whether politics is worth it.
Well, partly because they have been told, the message is sent every day that government doesn't work. You know, they take for granted all the things that a working government has done in the past.
Yeah.
And in some ways, we're still living on the investment that was made by that greatest generation.
I always joke that, and I said this about, one of the challenges of being president is like, you don't have a marketing budget.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh there. I didn't want to.
How could you
get
not?
up.
How could you not? So
We don't have a marketing budget.
Right.
Who's going to talk for us?
Well, I have a list in mind. And so Kyle, I posted the link so you can watch the whole thing. Kyle did a really nice piece and he focused on the FDR piece of it. Social Security and all of those things, which was a great take. But I wanted to take it to that marketing place because that was the funniest part. You are president of the wealthiest nation on the face of the planet. Do you really think that you don't have a marketing arm? Like all of corporate media, Politico, all of these things will pick up whatever you say and run with it. And you can pick up the phone and join a talk show. So that in context of what Trump did on Friday, it was hilarious to me to make that assertion. And then as I was listening to former First Lady Michelle Obama talk about people just don't know. I mean, in my head, I'm like, you mean basic civics? The funding that got cut. So people don't understand how these things work or how to get involved, or the fact that even local political parties who are supposed to be using things like Robert's rules and not anointing their successors are not teaching their own members that all the things that they're doing are absolutely wrong and counter to their own bylaws. You mean that kind of education? No, our political system thrives on that kind of ignorance. And that's why we are in the situation we're in. And then I think it was also, now Michelle and Barack are not that much older than I am, but I'm like, how tone deaf do you have to be to not recognize that this is no longer 1985 and anybody can go out on the Google machine and start putting this stuff together. It's not what do you mean? So it was, yeah.
Oh, the two things that I took away from this, obviously, from the marketing thing, other than that, which just made me laugh the first time I saw it, was that Obama's that young people are being told the government doesn't work. I would amend that statement that government doesn't work for young people.
Oh, or anybody under the 98%. And it's not that we're being told the government doesn't work. We are being shown. And there's a big difference, right? So in politics, you always have what they say and then what they do. So when you have Nancy Pelosi fighting Mitch McConnell and they have a war of words, I'm like, okay, show me what you're going to do about it. And what they end up doing is Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell go to dinner together and they have a great time and nothing gets done.
And matching scarves.
Right. So it's not
well,
that.
One other thing I just wanted to mention that I thought was telling is that you could hear in the background during that podcast a fan running, right? Now, I'm not 100% sure, but if you have AC in your house, you don't necessarily need a fan on. So Michelle and Barack, falling a little behind in your utility payments, maybe? Could you use a stimulus check? I mean, we're not doing speaking engagements right now. We can't get people in an auditorium. Are we running a little behind in our payments?
Only Perhaps. You would catch that with your keen audio ears. I hadn't noticed, but yeah.
Well, the first thing I thought is it's a podcast. Do they not have anybody capable of getting rid of that sound?
Apparently not, but Andy's available.
Hey, Michelle, if you need a quality sound engineer, let me know. I can maybe, get rid of that background noise, maybe enhance your sound a little bit, maybe change your words slightly.
Pod down whenever she's way off the mark.
Take the odd negative, turn it into a positive,
Right. And that was, her comments were totally they were a nicer version of let them eat cake, right? Because a few years ago we had on Fox News where we were told that if you have air conditioning, if you have a TV, if you have a working refrigerator, you're not poor. So you should be grateful. And here we're having someone, as Barack himself has said, that he is a conservative Republican, that, we just don't understand. We don't understand the intricacies of government. And I'm like, no, we understand very well. So let's pull back on that marketing critique that she had. As a president, what kind of marketing presence can you expect? And I think we saw a really good example from Trump last week. So Trump came out with this announcement that, okay, Congress has gone home, they've gone on vacation, they haven't solved this, so I'm going to step in and do it. And everyone went, oh, what's he going to do? And he said, I'm going to give you a tax holiday on your FICA taxes. And instead of the $600 for unemployment, I'm going to give you $400 and we'll work that through the states. And everybody lost their shit, right? Some people like, yay, look at what he did. And other people like, no, he's actually going to ruin Social Security and Medicare if he doesn't collect your taxes. So, Andy, are taxes required to fund Medicare?
Well,
you're not even American. Do you know the answer? Do we require FICA taxes to fund Social Security and Medicare?
Well, no, of course not. But the problem is that there's not enough people that understand how federal finances work, how macroeconomics works. So the government is hoping that by getting Trump to do this, then that gives us a perfect excuse to say, well, now we can't afford Social Security, so now we have to get rid.
And so right you are, because so what did people do? Did they educate people on how Trump is? No, it's not going to happen. No, they took the opposite approach. So I want to put up this Forbes article that came out. So Forbes first on the scene. They're like, yay, Trump, and let's kill Social Security. So this is Elizabeth Bauer writing for Forbes. She's a senior contributor. And she's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get away with, because the whole argument from the right is that you can do better investing your savings for your retirement, and you don't need this poverty insurance for old people and the disabled. So they're saying to you that this extra few $100s that you get on your paycheck, you just put it away, or maybe you invest it in the stock market and you'll come out better than if you have this poverty insurance, right? So the problem with that is, number one, I think it's 46% of seniors don't have a retirement account. And then the volatility of the stock market, like, I'm not a professional in this, right? Warren Lynch is, Warren Mosler, not Warren Lynch. Warren Mosler was a professional and he was able to make some money, but he was doing it as, a career. I don't have a career in this. So my risk of losing principal as well as the investment accrual is upwards of 70-80%. So you have all of these people saying Trump is right, let's get rid of the FICA tax and let's kill Social Security because we don't need it and you can do better.
Right, so it's like that old joke, right? About smoking. Right? You've heard that. I don't know if I've told that joke before, but it was, the two people, the smoker and the non-smoker, talking, and the non-smoker says, so how much do you smoke? Well, I smoke this much and I spend this much. He said, really? How long have you been smoking? Oh, about 40 years. Really? Do you realize that's over $200,000? With that money, you could have bought a Lamborghini. And the smoker says, really? Do you smoke? The guy says, no. I said, bro, where's your Lamborghini?
Exactly. And the cost of living has gone up and all of this. So just a reminder for people who don't understand where Social Security came from. Back during the Great Depression, we heard Obama talking about how we take for granted all of these programs that came about from the Greatest Generation. Well, the Greatest Generation is not the one that came up with Social Security. It was a generation before, from the Great Depression and all of these sort of things. They were the ones who put out Social Security, and Social Security was poverty insurance. And the problem, literally, and I cannot stress this enough, was you had our elderly people in the gutter dying. People were tired of stepping over bodies. And we're not talking about you and I, we're talking about Wall Street was tired of the inconvenience of stepping over bodies. So they tossed us a few crumbs with this poverty insurance, something that we rely on now to keep us out of poverty. Doesn't mean that we aren't poor, doesn't mean that we don't have elderly people still relying on cat food to eat. It means that we are not an inconvenience to Wall Street, so they won't have to step over us while they go into their big office. Okay? This is what the program is. So yeah, so we have on the right, they're like, yeah, let's cancel it. But nobody took the opportunity in Forbes to discuss why what Trump was saying was wrong, except on Sunday when a little bit more pushback came and there were people preparing legal challenges and all of this sort of thing. Then you started to see on Sunday White House people making the tour. And so here's Forbes on Sunday. So Friday and Saturday, they were pro-Trump. Now they're starting to walk it back. So this is Andrew Solinder. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Andrew. Sorry. So he did this nice little timeline. I'm going to leave this up for a minute while we discuss it. But the condemnation from liberals were quick to note that the payroll tax funds Social Security and Medicare, broadly popular programs, the defunding of which would be doubtlessly damaging to Trump politically. So never mind the fact that we would subjugate an entire generation to poverty, dire poverty, but it's politically damaging. This is where the pushback came from. No one was still talking about the fallacy of how things get funded. Nobody. So this, to me, I thought was kind of ridiculous. But then I turned to Queen Stephanie. And of course, Queen Stephanie, for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, Stephanie Kelton. She's a global leading economist in the global economic sphere. She was the advisor to many people. She worked in the CBO as well as others, but most recently was an economic advisor to Bernie Sanders. And she is a proponent of MMT as well as a lot of people around the world. So here's Stephanie Kelton taking to Twitter. She does not have this huge following where she can get on. She can just pick up the phone and get on a Sunday morning show the way that the White House folks can. But she did it anyway. And she did it on Twitter. And she broke it down for people in Twitter. And part of what she posted here is a link. I'm going to post that now to an article that she wrote a while ago. And then she linked it here, August 9th. But basically, she breaks it down in just a few sentences. She said, Part B of the law that regulates supplemental medical insurance, SMI, which pays for doctor bills and other outpatient expenses, which we know as Medicare Part B, and Part D, which covers drugs, and that pays for access to prescription drugs, are both projected to remain adequately financed and in indefinite future because current laws automatically provide financing each year to meet the next year's expectations. So the way the law is written for these two parts, this is B, Medicare Part B as in boy and D as in dog, are automatically funded, does not require a congressional vote, and does not require your taxes.
But how is that possible?
Exactly. So I'm going to post a link to the article that Miss Kelton posted. But Andy, how is it possible? This makes no sense.
Let's just do a quick promo for Professor Kelton and her new book, The Deficit Myth, which is on the bestseller list, has been for a long time, and you need to go out and get it and read it because it will explain all of this.
Which, by the way, disclaimer, we are not being paid in any way, shape, or form. No financing, no funding, no support, nothing. In fact, Ms. Kelton doesn't even know we're talking about her today, but maybe she will. so that's my disclaimer.
Maybe,
go ahead,
maybe
Andy.
someday. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
What we do, and all you have to do is point to the different heads of the Fed and Ben Bernanke, Cathcart, I don't know however you say his name. They've all explained it themselves. The head of the money.
Yeah, Mnuchin, Steve Mnuchin. So yeah.
The government creates it. They just make it. And it's not a printing press. The dollar bills that are in your pocket go to pay tips and paper boys and candy bars. The vast majority of our money is digital. It exists in accounts in computer systems. right? So stop saying printing money. We just create money. It's corporeal. For the most part, it doesn't exist physically. Money is like an idea, right? You get an idea in your head. It doesn't have a physical form. It can be represented in physical form. You can write down your idea. You can share your idea with people, and it can be implemented, right? Money works the exact same way. It's corporeal. It exists like a score of a football game, right? We have to stop thinking of it as a physical thing, as a physical manifestation. It is corporeal in nature, okay? Which means that, like a score in a football game, or Kerri's favorite sport, baseball, it just all of a sudden just, it's just conjured as a number on a scoreboard or in the paper or on the sports news or wherever, right? So stop thinking that we're constrained, that you have to collect taxes first before you can spend money. We always know that it's not that way.
Well, absolutely. And then I think through all of this, we have seen that, number one, unequivocally, trickle down is a lie. It is a lie told by oligarchs who want to keep you from asking questions. And during this time where we have seen absolute unprecedented transfer of wealth from working families, from regular folks up to the wealthy who are making money hand over fist on our suffering and death during this particular pandemic and any others that follow, wars, whatever, countless wars and things. Flip it around. So GDP is drawn from the work that we do, the intellectual property, the physical work, the caring for your children, for your elderly parents, for all of these things. That is what goes into GDP. And when we just saw a fall of GDP by like 32% during the shutdown, if that didn't make it crystal clear to everyone that, hey, what they've told us and what is actually happening are two entirely different things, then if nothing else, this little thread by Stephanie Kelton should show you without a doubt that we are absolutely being lied to, and the way that things are being misrepresented on a federal level just cannot absolutely continue. So we started the show with what was going on in Chicago and the Magnificent Mile and this gilded neighborhood of unattainable goods, people being shot at because they went and looted, even though, like Andy said, it's all insured and replaceable. People are not. The narrative is that the people are wrong, they're animals, all of this sort of thing. And those goods and services should have higher priority than the people themselves. So all of this, I hope, it was a long way to get here, but I hope that you understand that the way that we fund things and the way that we invest absolutely needs to be turned upside down. Or you're going to see more Magnificent Mile lootings all across the country and then into gated communities. So,
right, exactly, right. You're crossing over from the people being fed up with not being represented by government, changing to necessity, right? We're not giving you an opportunity to survive anymore, right? We're not going to give you a stimulus check. We're not going to, we're going to try to defund social services. You're going to set up all of your cards in this big house that's all going to come tumbling down soon, because the only thing that the 99% have is that they're the 99%.
That's exactly right.
People have to survive. And how do you do that? Any way you can.
And that's what's going to continue to occur. And that is personally my pushback on the vote for the lesser evil thing. And I'm trying to explain this to people, and it's really hard to do over social media because they're like, well, you need to vote blue to end this nightmare. And I'm like, the only thing I have left that has any shred of value is my vote. And if I just hand it over to you to continue not investing in me and my family and my neighbors and my community, then I have diminished the value of my vote. So no, I'm not prepared to say, well, vote Biden so that we can get Trump out. No, Biden, what are you going to do? What are you going to do besides not be Trump? Are you going to continue these policies that have people out here in desperate, dire straits? And so far, based on the Unity Commission, based on the DNC stuff, where is it? I don't know. I don't see it. So
it's going to, it could get as bad as this scenario. You get in your Mercedes SUV, you drive the 4 blocks down to the Starbucks, you get in line for the drive-through, you pull up, and you can't get caramel drizzle for your double almond milk latte.
Well, there's a nightmare scenario, Andy. Oh my goodness. What are we gonna do? So, all right. So I think that was enough doom and gloom. But, honestly, when you step back and if you listen to this in the afternoon, I hope you find the humor in it, because what we're hearing from leaders in Washington is just so utterly ridiculous and so wrong that you can't help but laugh at it and do your best to maintain your composure and help get the word out to neighbors. And these are neighbors across the political spectrum, because so many people still don't understand how finance works, what these policies look like, that voting for the lesser evil is still evil, and we need to really push back on these people who are, I'm sorry, I have a guest this morning who's being very distracting, but push back a little bit on this complete narrative. So one of the projects that we are taking on here is supporting neo-citizens, and we talked about this last week, and I want to do a better job of explaining what this is. So when we go through these rapid news cycles, we tend to forget everything that transpired. Like, somebody reminded me about Trump saying that there are people who rake leaves in the national forest. So I forgot, because...
Wait a minute. I thought that was only in Norway.
Yeah, no. In California. California didn't do enough to hire people to rake leaves in the forest. And I had forgotten about that insanity, because there's so many things coming all at once. So this group, Neo Citizens, and I posted the link in the chat, they're doing a couple really cool things. Number one, we saw the antitrust hearings in Washington with Mark Zuckerberg. So they're trying to build a new platform that competes with Facebook. And in order to do that, they're set up a funding, and this funding vehicle actually does a couple different things. Not only does it fund their efforts, but it funds other groups like ACLU and RACES and a few other organizations, including this one, that are progressive in nature and doing things on a pro-immigrant status and all of these other good works. So what they want to do is create a time capsule, a digital time capsule, and they're calling it Trump's Wall of Shame. So what you can do is purchase, just a little bit of this wall. I think it's 14,000 miles, goes against, Trump's map. We here at DLF, we have been granted and gifted mile 9 of this entire wall. So we can go ahead and put our messages and things that we want to share with the rest of the world, because I know we mentioned Norway and all of these other places who are looking at us like, damn, America, what's going on? So we can kind of get together and put those messages there and express ourselves in this message board that will be contained and captured forever. So this is what the program is. And for just $1.99, you can purchase your yardage and post whatever you want, your graphic, your message, and share it with the world. So just something that simple, $2 has such an impact on changing everything, not just for neo-citizens, but for all of these organizations, including ours. So please consider it, create a profile, and purchase your little block in this time capsule. Do it now. Yeah, so so we are proud supporters of their efforts, as well as some of these other really good organizations like ACLU, who have been working overtime in the last 4 years. So good on them. But that's all I have for this morning. Andy, any closing thoughts?
No, I think we're good. I think we've run the gamut this morning, at least for a Monday. We don't want people's heads to explode, so I think we should just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So with that, we'll get out of here, and we will be back here bright and early on Wednesday, a far more progressive Wednesday when you're wide awake and ready to go, and yeah, all of that. So good luck with your work week, and please stay safe and try to take care of each other. So, all right, have a good day.
Take care.
Hair in the dark, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair in the dark, we keeping it G.